Hi everybody, welcome to the ecology unit of the course. I'm on one of my daily walks. Today I'm at Sapsucker Woods. And here I am at that little woodlot that connects Monkey Run down by Flat Rock. I'm gonna use these and other places around town to show you how you can all become ecologists this semester. Are you ready? You know, one of the things that I love about ecology is I think it's one of the most intuitive topics that we study in this course. And the reason is, you know, because we all are animals living in the environment. We all walk around with our eyes open and we're all curious. So this project, this ecology project, is really about exploring something you've always been curious about. It's about asking questions that you genuinely want the answer to. And I encourage you to use this project to explore a place that's important to you, maybe even your own backyard.
Sit beside a mountain stream, see her waters rise. Listen to the pretty sound of music.
All right, so one of the things that we will talk about in terms of like your potential projects is about like trying to identify environmental gradients. And what I mean by that is like a gradient in resource that goes from light to dark, or in that case the resource is light, a gradient of water that goes from wet to dry, that kind of thing. Here I am in the middle of this trail at Sapsucker Woods, and you can immediately see this difference in this, I think it's a wild marigold. It starts off really dense at the edge of the trail, and then as you go deeper and deeper in the woods, it gets less and less dense. What do you suppose is causing that? That could be a topic for your own research. Damn! A great place to study ecological gradients is along a river in its floodplain. Think about all the things that might change along this gradient as you move up this bank, separated from the river in its flow. Here you can see a mowed area of my lawn and an area that I've let go wild. What kinds of things do you think would change along that particular gradient? Check out this tree behind me. There's moss on the trunk, but it doesn't seem to be very evenly distributed. It seems to be a lot denser on one side of the tree than on the other. I wonder why. I wonder how trails themselves affect biodiversity. And does the size of the trail matter? And what's the impact? Does it affect species richness? Does it affect density? I don't know. But I bet you can find out. So going a bit up the hill, you can see this floodplain system here next to the river. And there is a nice opportunity for a study in how a water gradient would impact plants. In other words, further up here on this hill, you would expect the soil to be drier, right, than it is down here when it's still connected to the river via flooding. I wonder how plant communities would change as you move away from this river. So I find myself in this one place at Sapsucker Woods, and on one side of the trail, right behind me, is a very small pond. And right over here on the other side of the trail is a significantly larger pond. I wonder how the size of the pond affects the number of things living in those ponds. Speaking of size, one of the concepts that we'll talk about later in the ecology unit is called island biogeography. And this is a concept that basically says that the larger an island, the more species could live on it. But what you should consider is islands can be defined the traditional way, as is, pieces of land in the middle of the ocean. But they can also be defined as sort of any isolated habitat. For example, these logs right here form islands of habitat that are different than the surrounding habitat, right? So if you look at the size of this log right here and compare it to the size of this log over here, you might be able to hypothesize something about the ecological communities living underneath. You just gotta pick logs that you can actually move. What other kinds of islands can you think of? One of the things that you have to kind of put up with when you live in my neighborhood is deer. Deer are overpopulated and they're just voracious herbivores. They'll eat anything in my yard except for, it seems like, the ferns. Well, some places, like Sapsucker Woods, for example, have tried to control herbivory from large animals like deer. You can see behind me this plastic black fence. This is an experiment that the Lab of Ornithology has been running for a long time to try to exclude deer from an area and see how it affects a host of different kinds of ecological interactions, species richness, diversity, dispersion patterns, all of that stuff. And so if you're interested in studying the impacts of deer, there are lots of opportunities and I can help you find them. Okay, one of those opportunities to study the effects of deer is right here in the Cornell Botanical Gardens. Check this out. This deer exclusion area has a heavy-duty gate, a really tall fence. Deer are not getting through here. It's been here ever since I can remember, and I've had students work in this in the past. We just need to ask permission. Anyway, a possibility. I'm in my backyard and I just had an idea of an ecological experiment that I could do based on stuff that I just find laying around. For example, this is my compost pile from last summer. All right, I could put composted food into little containers. It doesn't even have to be a planter. It could be a Dixie cup. And then I could test how plants grow with the composted soil versus other kinds of soil. Maybe sandy soil or gravelly soil. Just an idea. Here I am at a bird feeder in my backyard. One of the things you can do if you have your own bird feeders is you could set up similar bird feeders in two different areas of your yard and count the birds every morning at the same time. That'd be cool.
Swaying daisies sing a lazy song beneath the sun.
One of the things you'll need to do for your ecology project is you'll need to measure something. You need to generate some data for this project. That's part of it. And so let's talk about some of the things that you could measure this time of year in this area. Identifying trees is difficult even during the summer for some people, but it's almost impossible unless you're an expert this time of year because there's no leaves on the deciduous trees. But one of the things that you could do to get around that is measure the leaves on the forest floor. For example, we know that there's beech trees in this area. We know that there are, this looks like a red maple tree in this area. Here's a coniferous tree. I'm not exactly sure what that is, but you could identify it fairly easily. What else do we have here? That might be it. So there might just be the red maples and the beech trees in this area. Oh wait, here's what looks like a sugar maple maybe. So a red maple, sugar maple, and a beech. See? We just measured tree species richness. Maybe one of the things that you want to do is calculate plant density. But the thing is you have to figure out a way to standardize your measurements. Look no further than a piece of string and a tent stake. What I've done is I've cut this string to be 57 centimeters long. Now a circle with a radius of 57 centimeters has an area of 1 square meter. So this is a perfect sampling device to get density measurements. Now, say you wanted to get a density of this trout lily that's in this patch of forest over here. One of the things that you'd want to do is randomize where you take that measurement. And so what I could do is I could just take this sampling device that I made and throw it over my shoulder, and that could serve as the center point of my sample. So here's where it landed. I can put the center of the sampler right there, and I can then count the number of these trout lilies that fall into my sampling universe here. Okay? Easy, right? You know, I said earlier that I thought ecology was the most intuitive of the topics that we're covering this semester. And I think because of that, a little bit of it goes a long way to increasing your understanding of the world. And so what I'm hoping, more than anything from this unit, is that it helps all of you appreciate your places, the places that you find important to you, in an exciting new way.
Mother Nature's smile.